is Duke University.
Today on Primetime, Duke deals with a variety of emergency situations, from the heavy snows of winter to maintaining campus safety and the storms, tornadoes, and hurricanes of this past summer. With about 34,000 employees and 14,000 students across the university and health system, Duke's emergency management plan acts as a comprehensive way to respond successfully to any emergency situation. Today, Primetime welcomes Kyle Cavanaugh, Vice President of Administration and Duke's Emergency Coordinator, to talk about recent emergencies, how Duke handles them, and what's being done to best respond to future incidents. Viewers can submit questions during the broadcast by emailing working@duke.edu or visiting hr.duke.edu/primetime.
Good afternoon and welcome to Primetime, Duke's online employee forum. I'm Leonora Manai, editor of Working at Duke and the Duke Today section of Working at Duke. Today I'm here with Kyle Cavanaugh, Vice President for Administration and Duke's Emergency Coordinator. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you, Leonora.
Today we're going to talk about how Duke handles emergencies and notifies the Duke community in the event of a life-threatening situation. We've had a very busy several months. We've had an earthquake, we've had hurricane, we've had tornado warnings, and we've had a bomb threat. I thought it would be helpful today to start talking about just laying the groundwork for the evolution of emergency management.
Thank you, Leonora. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to actually come and speak with you about this most important topic. There's clearly nothing that we take more serious than the overall safety of our students, our faculty, staff, and the thousands of visitors that we have here at Duke on a daily basis. And so I think it would be helpful to actually start with a very brief kind of synopsis of the evolution of the topic of emergency management. First, even at a national level, we see a lot of activity that came out of the two World War II's wars that we had. And from there, what we saw, the creation of federal agencies, and that really focusing on types of community responses, understanding what they needed to do based on certain risks from a preparedness and a response standpoint. In the industries that we work in higher education, in academic medicine, in healthcare, we actually have seen a similar type of evolution. Unfortunately, we've seen some unique events on college campuses over the last 20 years, and then more recently, some more serious issues that have really driven a host of different types of changes. Our activity here at Duke has mirrored that evolution, and especially over the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of development in this space. Specifically, we now have a standing emergency management steering committee. That committee represents each of the major kind of functional areas that we have on the campus, ranging from athletics to the health system, student affairs, transportation, police, and the like. In addition, we have emergency coordinators now in each one of our departments. As you well know, we're a highly decentralized operation, so we rely on those individuals greatly in terms of assisting us in assessing risk and also in facilitating communication. And in the communication space, we also now have a whole suite of robust tools that we use and deploy based on each of the types of scenarios that evolve.
Right, thanks, Kyle. Picking up on the robust tools, just this morning, for example, we had a whole test of the Duke Alert emergency notification system. It might be helpful for our viewers to just sort of remind folks about our tools. It wasn't long ago that we communicated by fax machine when we had a crisis on campus. Remind us about all the tools that we have today.
Certainly, we can see our age difference when you say fax machine. I mean, I remember where the primary tool was a phone tree. And so now we're fortunate, and those tools continue to expand and to get refined. So one of the primary tools that we continue to use is email. We have the capacity to send out 65,000 emails literally in several minutes in terms of getting those out. And that goes out to all of our students, faculty, staff, and other individuals that need to know in the community as well. We also now have had the evolution of the text system, and the text system now, similar to what has happened on other campuses, that as students register, we collect cell phone numbers, and that actually is pushed out then from a communication standpoint. We do that exactly the same way for any Duke-issued phones to our faculty and staff, and then we have an opt-in process for our faculty and staff as well. In addition to emails and texts, the web presence has become a very strong component of what we do. And with that web activity, we've now enhanced that where not only do we have an emergency page, but if we were to have something occur, we have the ability of cascading that immediately out to other web pages. So each of the major schools, each of the major units that may maintain their own web page, all of those now would be alerted at the same time as we update the emergency page. We also have a siren system. It's an outdoor warning system that is deployed in a number of different places. And then I mentioned earlier about the department coordinators, but we also rely on some old good technology like phone trees and kind of reverse 911s and those types of pieces. So we're very fortunate that we have a number of different tools at our disposal. We do envision those tools getting better and better over the next couple of years.
Right, sort of dovetailing off that, no emergency is ever the same, and so we might need to apply our tools based on the certain circumstance. So I kind of want to take you back to a couple of incidents to sort of think through behind the scenes and provide our viewers with a little bit of inside knowledge about how those decisions were made. And so we had a series of emails and text alerts that went out regarding the tornado warnings, but the sirens weren't activated. And then we had the bomb threat on October 1st, and we did not activate the siren. Help us understand and take us behind the scenes how those decisions were made, when to apply a certain tool and when not to.
Happy to do that. We have a team of people that work on these types of incidents on a regular basis. And so if I could take those in reverse order, you're exactly right that no two incidents are exactly the same. They each take on their own little personality, and depending on the case facts, those case facts will be factored into the deployment of which tools we actually use. So in the case of the bomb situation, we were informed very, very early that it was a high probability that this was a hoax, unfortunately. But not knowing that with 100% certainty, we needed to take some precautions. So we evacuated everybody out of that building very quickly. We then also established a safe perimeter. That was the primary piece of what we wanted to do. Now, this happened at 9:30 on a Saturday morning. Had this happened at 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, the response would have been very different. Even though we evacuated and secured the perimeter, there still was a need to alert the community, but at what level becomes the question. So we did put up information out on our internal communication piece called Duke Today, so that was updated so that people were aware of that, and then an email was sent to the student body. It didn't appear to be a need to send it to 34,000 employees because it was, again, 9:30 on a Saturday morning. If that had happened on a 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, the response would have been different. Right. Now, in the case of weather-related issues, a couple of different issues that we start monitoring those scenarios very early. And we now have tools that we can actually be very specific in terms of the potential risk. So although we may see something at the national weather level that indicates that we may have something occurring in Durham County, we could have something, and that was the case here, where we had something in North Durham County. But North Durham County is actually 20 miles from campus. Right. Whereas if we had something in Orange County, it's not only proximity to the campus, but also potentially the trajectory of the storm could be one where it's coming closer to campus. So those are calls that we make with that. We have tools now in the weather space, and we use these for athletic events as well, where we can get to a level of specificity that we know with a higher level of certainty what the probability is, what the trajectory is, and then we use that to factor in what tools we will deploy.
Right. Since you're on weather, maybe we could go back to Hurricane Irene. We're still in hurricane season now through the end of November. Back at that time when we were alerted to Hurricane Irene that was on the way, that sort of weather pattern we can plan for. And my understanding is you started planning for Hurricane Irene at the beginning of the week, yet it didn't come until the weekend. So tell us about how that all came to be in terms of the process during that course of the week for Hurricane Irene.
Certainly. Most of the schools up and down kind of the East Coast now have tools that allow them to be monitoring weather and certainly the issue of hurricanes days in advance. So we actually do monitor that very closely, very regularly as to what the probability is, and we kind of gear up based on that probability. So in the case at hand, we actually started mobilizing on that Tuesday. And what exactly does mobilization mean? We have a severe weather operation team, a group we call the SWAT team. So in addition to the steering committee and the department coordinators, this group are the operational people, the on-the-ground folks. So this is from transportation to police to facilities. So starting on that Tuesday, we did a couple of different things. One, we let the community know that we were monitoring the situation and taking certain precautions. Those precautions include ensuring that if we did actually have a significant hit from a tornado in our environment, that we could sustain ourselves for a couple of days. And that meaning we have enough things in the supply chain for food, for fuel, for transportation, for all of those types of issues. So our facilities people, who are phenomenal, were out actually making sure all the drains were clear, that if we got a large amount of water, we would be able to have that dissipate in a quick period of time. We topped off all of the vehicles and made sure that we had subsequent fuel, that if we needed to be self-sustained, we ensured that all the generators were working. So all of that work was going on every day from that Tuesday. We also work very aggressively with contractors that if we did see an event and it had some damage, that we could not only mitigate the risk, but then also respond to the impact. So if you recall, the actual impact for us on that day happened on a Saturday. Again, when the impact on that was fairly mitigated because of the day of the week that it was hit, but we also kind of watch any events that we may have going on, whether that's a athletic event or a concert or a speaker. But we did have some tree impact there and had contractors deployed immediately to be able to respond to that so that they could actually clean up the campus as quickly as possible. Our support staff in all of those events actually responded phenomenally. And so not only did the risk get managed, but we were also able to recover very quickly.
Right, and so one of the areas too, we've got a campus at Beaufort. Tell us about how we managed Beaufort, and we watched Beaufort, but also, you know, when you're working these emergencies, it's a 24/7 operation. You were probably up very early in the morning dealing with that and communicating with Beaufort since it's on the coast. So maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, when bad weather rolls in, sleep is at a premium. And so it's not just me, but it's a team of people behind me that are up through the evening and early in the morning. We have phenomenal leadership at Beaufort, and they have a very well-established emergency management plan. So we were also in very close communication with them starting on that Tuesday leading up. Now, because of the trajectory of that storm and where that was going to impact, it was going to arrive a little bit earlier. They have some unique issues associated with their topography of where they're located. So there was an evacuation done at about noon on that Friday so that all life was protected. They had some unique issues in terms of securing structures and vessels and those types of pieces. They did have some water impact, and fortunately the impact on the roofs and things was not as severe as we had anticipated. So they were back up and running by that Sunday afternoon.
Right. I want to remind viewers that you can submit questions through the Primetime website or through our email, working@duke.edu. What I'd like to do now is go to some of our reader and viewer submitted questions, and we'll start with, I'm just going to read this out. Are the emergency texts always sent to everybody? What happens if there is a fire on one side of campus? Would the sirens and texts go off all over campus or just one part?
Well, you were exactly right earlier when you referenced that no two emergencies are exactly the same. So it really depends on the type of emergency that we're dealing with, the potential impact, whether it's local or whether it's going to impact the entire campus. We do set up our email and our text systems right now to be mass communication tools, but we do have the ability to actually reach into a certain location and to talk with them. So an example that I would give you is we had a gas leak downtown, and we now have about 2,000 people deployed downtown. It was imperative that we were communicating with that group, but not necessarily the entire campus through our communication tools. So those decisions are based on a whole host of variables.
All right, thanks, Kyle. We'll go to our next question. Text alerts are great for an emergency where people need to know what to do or where to go, but why does staff get alerts about robberies and assaults taking place on campus in the wee hours of the morning?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if something happens in your neighborhood, the local jurisdiction is not sending you a text or an email or communicating to you about a robbery. But in institutions of higher education, we are governed by something that's referred to as the Clery Act. That act does require, which we actually think is a very good idea, of what is referred to as timely warnings. Those warnings go through also kind of a matrix of the type of crime that occurs, the actual specific location of the crime, and most importantly, probably the probability that there's additional risk. And so by Clery, we are required to actually send out timely warnings, and that covers the entire operation. So that would be not only our students, but also our faculty and staff as well.
Right, that's an important distinction to make, that we're required to send the emails based on the Clery federal law.
Absolutely.
Let's see, we have some more questions coming in. This question is in regard to the recent bomb scare at the Bryan Center. Although this happened on a weekend, why were students only alerted and not the entire employee pool?
Yeah, I think, again, those are unique situations, every one that occurs. In that specific case, what we knew early on was that in all probability this was a hoax. As we talked about earlier, we did evacuate, secure the perimeter, update web pages, and send out a communication to the student body. Had this happened on a Tuesday afternoon, we probably would have done some more communication on that. I also should mention, Leonora, that the coordination and the collaboration that we have with local agencies, whether that's fire or police, has been simply outstanding. In the case of the bomb situation, we not only worked very closely with our own police department, but also with the Durham Police Department, the County Department, and the Raleigh Police Department. It was actually the Raleigh Police Department that coordinated with us with the bomb dog to actually go through the building, and then we released the building at about 1:30.
All right. Let's see. We've got another question. For every time you make an emergency announcement, how many close calls do you know about that don't end up getting made public?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it raises kind of the issue of kind of what's the threshold on some of these issues. So I'm not sure if I would label it exactly as close calls, but we have events that occur that one of the challenging issues is getting accurate, timely information to actually make decisions with. So one incident that I can mention to you, that we had a report of shots heard in a location that had very close proximity to campus. And so that would have required us to launch a whole host of communications and to assess kind of what the potential impact is in there. Within a matter of minutes, the second communication was actually they were not shots that were fired, and the individuals that were involved in this no longer were not only close to campus, but they had actually left Durham. So there was no need to do any communication on that. So we have lots of those things that happen kind of below the waterline, if you will.
Right. We have another question that's come in. What is the current number of Duke websites that display an emergency notification during an emergency?
Well, as we talked about our tools earlier, the website continues to be a very reliable function for us. So off of the Duke Alert page, we then cascade it down to in excess of about 50 pages right now. Each of the major institutions that we have that are in our decentralized environment have agreed and kind of have put in the technology to allow that to happen. So once we do have an alert, we are able to update the Duke Alert page, cascades immediately to the home page, to Duke Today, and then to each of the other areas, individual schools, as well as things like Go Duke in athletics.
Right. Let's see here. Another question's come in. How does Duke deal with emergencies overseas with its expanding global presence?
Yeah, the international presence continues to be a significant challenge. There are a number of unique tools that we have, but part of it is knowing where people are when. And so at the undergraduate student level, there is, through the international operation, a requirement to actually use the travel registry. And that's a terrific device and a terrific tool because it allows us to actually know where people are. It is an optional piece that we have now for our faculty and staff, but a lot more are using that, which is a great device then because then we know where people are. We have a number of different strategies that we use depending on the type of incident that may get involved. And one thing that we didn't talk about that is a growing communication presence for us is in the social media space, so with Facebook and Twitter. And so in the incident that happened last spring in Japan, those tools became very helpful in terms of locating people, ensuring they were safe, and making sure that they had the ability to get out of a country if they needed to.
Right. So another question we have is, winter is upon us, obviously. What preparations are being made for winter?
Yeah, winter in Durham is a different definition than winter in Brooklyn, New York, where I grew up. The primary issue that we end up dealing with is actually even more challenging than some that you see up in the Northeast. That our primary issue that has been historically a challenge is ice. So we've worked very closely in having a ice plan, both from a mitigation and a removal standpoint. We do monitor the roads and have the same type of technology that we described earlier that allow us to understand kind of what is developing there. We have policies in place, but we also have a prioritization process of both internal roads, internal lots, internal walking paths, and that has been communicated out to the population. We've also worked very closely with our disability management services area as well to ensure that we still had accessible areas in the case of really inclement weather.
Right. Thanks, Kyle. One question that I'd like to sort of end on, I think, is if you could tell our viewers, if you had one suggestion that you want to offer up on how they can stay safe or how to keep Duke safe, what would that be?
Well, I'd be challenged to limit it to one, but I think one is to certainly understand the tools that we have and what our communication modalities are. We are a very safe environment. Duke is a safe campus. However, we do have what we see as crimes of opportunity, mainly around property, so people need to continue to be aware and take all of the common sense precautions about locking doors and making sure that they're walking with someone in the evening, being aware of staying in lighting areas, all of those types of precautions. But I think predominantly being aware of what are the tools that we have available.
Right. Kyle, I want to thank you very much for joining us today on this very important topic, and I want to let our viewers know that you can watch a replay of this discussion on the Primetime website, or you can also read more about it on Duke Today and learn more about Duke's emergency management plan at emergency.duke.edu. Thanks a lot for watching.